At the time this took place, I was 12 years old. My parents always kept an eye on me, and my brothers always warned us to stay close to them when we were young, and if anyone ever made us uncomfortable, to tell them straight away. Now, since this encounter, I have been paranoid about keeping myself safe and staying away from creeps. But at that age, I was very shy and quiet. I often hid behind my mom's skirt, and even though I was aware, I felt completely safe and didn't often think about running into people of the hair-raising nature. This encounter changed my way of thinking. I was homeschooled, and my little brother was homeschooled too. My parents went grocery shopping once every week, and my little brother and I accompanied them, mostly to get out of the house and for the opportunity to maybe get some fast food for lunch. One such trip to the shops, we had basically finished filling our trolley with groceries and were ready to pay. Mom had realized that we forgot onions, so I volunteered to go fetch some. As I made my way down the aisle, I saw a dodgy-looking man pass me, but didn't think much of him. I proceeded to the checkout and found the same man making small talk with my dad. I studied him while I got closer to my father. He looked about in his late 60s, with wisps of gray hair coming out of his mostly bald head, glasses, and a large mole under his left eye. I stood next to my dad, and the guy gave me a toothy smile and said something in which I assume was what sounded like French, with the most disgusting breath that I'm pretty sure it killed the flowers behind me, and started staring at my shirt. I didn't get it, but he repeated himself in English. "You like Paris, do you?" He pointed at my shirt, which had the Eiffel Tower printed on it. I guess, but I like this shirt." "Oh, do you? Interesting," he said, but this kept switching glances between my face and my shirt. Suddenly, Dad shoved me out of the exit and hurried me into the parking lot. I didn't understand until my mom came out with my brother in tow. Dad told Mom that there was a weirdo in the store who kept staring at my boobs. Let me note that I didn't look any older than I was. Not that would excuse his actions, but me being young, it made me uncomfortable, and I wasn't a young girl who got catcalled or anything, so I wasn't used to this kind of thing, and this man was old enough to be my grandfather. The next week we went shopping again, on the same day, but at a later time. Parents and little bro made their way to the entrance, and I went to get a trolley from the trolley bay. The shop was in a 2-story building on the second floor, and I looked down to the first floor and saw the man directly underneath my position, his back to the wall and smoking. Then he turned to go to the stairs at my left and noticed me standing there. He stared back for a minute. Then he must have recognized me because he got an enormous smile on his face and started up the stairs, at which I hurried inside to find my family. I started down the first aisle and was relieved to see my mom at the end of the aisle. Back turned, alas, before I could reach her, I felt a hand brush against my butt, softly, but I still felt it through my jeans. He passed me and looked me dead in the eye. "Hi, girlie," he whispered, with the same flower-killing breath, before rushing down the next aisle, out of sight. I turned to the next aisle with my mom, and the man was standing shoulder to shoulder with my little brother, 7 at the time, observing him in a predatory manner. My big sister's instincts kicked in, and I bolted to drag my little bro away from the wacko. He still followed us around the store, but kept his distance because my dad was nearby now. I still hadn't told my parents about the man, and when my mom told me to take my little bro to look at the toys, I resisted, but reluctantly agreed after my mom gave me the mum look. As we looked at the toys, I kept my backside facing the baskets/wall, thinking this would not allow him to grope me. As we went to leave the toy section, the man finds us, looking like he had just run a marathon around the shop. He picked out a teddy bear and approached us. "Hi," he said. I told my little bro to run, and was about to follow him when the man full-on cupped my butt and jiggled it. "So soft," he said. I let out a scream and bolted to my dad, bawling. I told him everything, and Dad got extremely enraged. He stormed around the store looking for the sicko, but he had already left. No one was told because I told my parents. I just wanted to go home. In hindsight, we should have told the manager and the police. My advice to young girls and boys is be aware. No matter how safe you feel, someone could still find a way, and if someone tries something, be loud, make a scene, and people around you are aware, and always tell someone, parents, friends, staff, etc. It took this to make me truly realize my surroundings, and it's horrible. And parents, please keep your kids safe. With creeps like this, you'll never know what they'll do. If I didn't have my parents to protect me, it could have gone down very differently. So, to the sick bastard who thinks it's okay to touch and grab little kids, let's never meet again. This happened around 4 years ago in middle school, grade 6. Around when I was around 10 or 11. Often our schools would do fire drills 3 times a year and 1 lockdown drill, so every student could be prepared for an emergency. That happened around mid-year, when we'd already done our lockdown drills months ago, so when the specific siren went off, I knew it wasn't a drill. At the time, I was in the toilet when the siren started blaring. Of course, I was scared, leaving myself locked in a stall. We were already told if we were in the bathroom, a teacher would come get us and take us to the nearest classroom for safety. I remember counting and waiting a few minutes for whatever teacher that would find me, but none came. I decided to exit the bathroom and walk around the yard a bit. The sirens were still going, so trying to hear for anything wasn't really an option. Although at the front of the school, there was a dirty-looking man. He was leaning on the fence, just staring towards the school, knife in hand. When he noticed me, he waved before entering the school, walking towards me. Of course, I started running away, heading towards the bins and hiding between those. He never found me, but I know he was arrested because my mom brought up the info on him recently and described that he had been watching the school every day in his car, and the reason the school went into lockdown was because they noticed him standing out in front, and the reason why my mom only told me this info recently was because she thought I couldn't handle it back then. This story is from a few years back, when I was in my last year of college. I was taking a history class that I loved, and it just so happened that my good friend, Amelia, was in the class too. Of course, we sat next to one another. The class was taught by a very popular professor, so there were a good deal of people in it. At the time, I was a smoker, as was my friend Amelia, so we made a habit of sharing cigarettes together after class. Around this time, I was starting to befriend another person, Rachel. She and I didn't take any classes together, but she lived with another good friend of mine. So we started to get to know each other, and Rachel and I would do homework together, hang out outside of the library together, on study breaks, and so on. Amelia met Rachel separately, and before long the 3 of us became a little trio. About a month after we all became friends with Rachel, this boy from Amelia and I's class started saying hello to us during our little cigarette breaks. He would make a little comment here and there about things we were learning in class, and would ask us how we were doing on our papers and such. Eventually, we learned his name was Ryan, and Ryan became a fixture in our cigarette ritual. After a little while, Amelia and I noticed that Ryan was asking a lot of questions about our daily schedules. At first, we thought he was just trying to get to know us and our interests, but his questions were getting specific. What times did we go to the library? When did we study in places other than the library? Who did we like to study with? He was his normal smiley and friendly self the whole time, but the subject matters of his questions were just off. We thought perhaps he was just a little bit socially awkward. A lot of people at our school, well known for being full eccentric students, were eccentric. It wasn't terribly uncommon to encounter someone who acted a bit differently than the norm. We let it slide. Ryan started asking Amelia and I to hang out outside of class. He wanted to tag along in what we usually did, but Amelia and I were both usually busy at the time, and it kept not working out with our schedules. He kept asking every day after class though, and we noticed he was getting less happy and significantly more irritated as time continued to go on. Amelia and I both agreed that he was starting to make us uncomfortable, though we couldn't quite put our fingers on why. One day Rachel met Amelia and I at her dormitory, saying she had something serious she needed to speak with us about. When we got there, we settled onto a bench and got to talking. Rachel told us that she had recently gotten out of a terribly abusive relationship with a boy who hit her, sexually assaulted her, and took general pleasure in her misery. Around the time we had met Rachel, she had begun the process of reporting him to the campus authorities in an attempt to have him removed from campus. A temporary no-contact order had been put in place between the two of them, and Rachel told us that she had just been moved into the dorm she was living in so that he wouldn't know where she lived. She had also found out that her ex was attempting to befriend the people she knew in an attempt to find out where she was living. where she spent her time, and what she liked to do and when. She wanted to warn us in case he approached us, so that we would keep our distance and not reveal any information about her routines. She told us his name, and his name was Ryan. Amelia and I both looked at each other in shock. To confirm, we asked Rachel to describe what he looked like, and she described our new cigarette buddy and classmate to a freaking T. We immediately informed Rachel about the interactions we had been having with Ryan, and Rachel informed us that we were in the 5th and 6th people she had confirmed that Ryan was attempting to make contact with. Of course, we immediately started to avoid him, switching up her routines to make sure we left the area immediately after class ended. A few weeks later, Ryan stopped showing up to class. Neither of us ever saw him again. A few weeks after that, Rachel informed Amelia and I that Ryan had been expelled from school. He had sexually assaulted another student at a party. When they went to collect evidence from his dorm room, they found a detailed ledger of information he had collected about Rachel, and pieces of writing about all of the horrendous things he wanted to do to her. I'm not entirely sure what happened to him, but in case this message was not clear, no Ryan, let's not meet. When I was about 6 years old in 2004, my mom started taking my sister and I to Dr. Daniel's pediatric dental office. The dental center was located inside a giant yellow mansion that also doubled as Dr. Daniel's house. It was honestly gorgeous. When I first started going to the dentist, I was extremely shy and actually suffered from selective mutism and had a lot of autistic-like tendencies. Needless to say, I relied heavily on my mother's comfort and for someone to give me a voice, because it was extremely anxiety-inducing for me to talk to strangers, especially men for some reason. When my sister and I got called in from the waiting room, my mom followed us to the office until she was told by Dr. Daniels that parents were not allowed to be with their children, as it taught kids independence, to which my mom complied to. Once in there, he immediately separated my sister and I, and in reaction to that, I cried because I felt so scared. Dr. Daniels did not like crying, so he grabbed me and put his hands over my mouth and nose, shook me, and aggressively warned me that if I continued to cry and scare the other kids, that he would make a situation a lot worse. Obviously, this scared me even more, so I started to cry again. Dr. Daniels had enough and took me into his house part of the dentist's office, where he screamed at me again, grabbed me by the neck, and shoved me. His hygienist Judy came over and told me if I continued to cry, she would spank me so hard I wouldn't know it hit me. Afterwards, he gave me a juice concoction and left me alone in his house for about 5 minutes until he took me back into the dental office and did work on my teeth. I guess I just instinctively knew that if I wanted to survive, I just had to act like I was not terrified and hold on the tears. All I wanted was my mommy. After the first appointment, my sister and I told my mom that we were scared of the dentist and that he was a mean man, but she just took it as me being an anxious child, so we continued to see him. Each visit was just as terrifying. Every time he pulled into the mansion, my heart just melted away inside my chest. I was so scared. It was no longer pretty to look at. Every time we went to the dentist, Dr. Daniels, or the tooth man as he called himself, always had us have heavy dental work procedures done. We had seals done on several baby teeth and plenty of teeth removed, some with his fingers, some with no regards to pain levels at all. And often when having a tooth removal or seals done, your mouth had to be opened up with a retractor. He would leave us there with this retractor on for about 45 minutes or so before he came to work on our teeth. Sometimes he would eat his lunch while we sat there with our mouth open. Probably one of the worst pains I have ever felt in my life. I remember one time when I was about in 3rd grade, I had been leaned down in the chair waiting with the retractor on for an hour. I was in so much pain I couldn't take it. I sat up on the chair and tried to scream and cry as loud as I could. Dr. Daniels came rushing over angry as could be, took my retractor off, and then took me back into his house part again, where he screamed at me for being a big baby and scaring off all the other kids. I was so sad in myself because I hadn't cried in so long, and then took me back to the other dentist chair and then pinned me down to my seat in a straitjacket. He put my retractor back on and said that I would have to wait longer because I caused such a scene. All I could do was shed silent tears and drool everywhere, and I couldn't even wipe it because he locked up my arms. Afterwards, my mouth would become so swollen and filled with rashes. It hurt to talk for days. It would leave bruises and swells as soon as I left his chair. He would often tell my mother I was a difficult patient if I so much as winced at his torture. Once he removed 6 of my teeth at once, and I could barely eat. While he ripped out teeth, he would often sing songs. It was so Sweeney Todd-like. When I was in the 7th grade, I started getting some new braces, and we started seeing an orthodontist. Not long after that, we stopped seeing Dr. Dan, and started seeing a new dentist, who was actually nice. I had never known that getting your teeth cleaned didn't have to feel like going through a saw trap. I think my mom took us out of Dr. Dan's practice when the orthodontist looked at our dental records and saw a lot of unnecessary procedures being done to our mouths. Not long ago, I was having a conversation with a friend about our childhood fears, and instantly my mind went to the tooth man. Curious, I googled him to see what had happened to him, and my happiness the practice was shut down, and left under his name was a Yelp page that was still left up. The page was filled with numerous 1-star reviews from former patients that were once abused as kids in his office, using the page as an outlet to express their trauma. I started to cry because their experiences were so close and some identical as to what I went through when I was a kid. It was so sad, but at the same time really validating to know I was not alone. A lot of the procedures we went through were just a scam for him to collect money off our parents' insurance. And now that I think about it, he probably was so adamant on us not crying and screaming for help because he didn't want parents to hear and come to see what was going on. I shake thinking about this. I really pray that he hasn't opened up another practice somewhere else. I know it's hard to not blame parents in this situation, but the truth is this man was just a swift abuser. For every bruise and swell we had, he would have dental explanations that would make the parents feel stupid for asking. He was an authority figure. I don't blame my mom for not believing us. She knew he was firm, but probably thought we were confusing firmness with meanness. To be honest, even writing this torture was so wild it actually sounds made up. She eventually did come around. She's not alone, as there were hundreds and hundreds of parents that were duped and deceived by him. To Dr. Dan, please, never let us meet again. And to any parent reading this, if you're ever told not to go in with your child to an appointment, something's really not right. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Jensen here. I hope you enjoyed these stories. I had a lot of fun reading them. If you can help me by smashing that like and subscribe button and sharing this on all of your social medias, maybe send a copy of this video to your dad, to your mom, to your little brother, to your dentist, to some creepy guy at the grocery store. You know, I'd really appreciate that. Anyways, you guys take it easy, and I'll catch you in the next one.